Have you ever stared across the empty vastness of a desert and felt like something was watching you? Tonight I bring you 3 bone-chilling true horror stories that took place in some of the most isolated and unforgiving deserts on Earth. These aren't tales from fiction. They're real experiences from real people who ventured into the dunes and encountered something they can never forget. So grab your flashlight, zip up your tent, and whatever you do, don't wander off the trail. Let's begin. Josh had navigated the Sonoran Desert's sun-bleached trails for over a decade. He'd survived flash floods, rattlesnake bites, and a harrowing night trapped in a slot canyon, but nothing compared to the terror of 2018. His friends called him reckless for hiking solo, but Josh relished the solitude, the way the desert's vastness mirrored the quiet corners of his mind. This trip was supposed to be routine, 5 days tracing ancient petroglyph sites near the Cabeza Prieta wilderness. By the 3rd day, the heat had been relentless, even for June. Josh's GPS flickered intermittently, but he shrugged it off, relying on memory to reach a sheltered campsite he'd used years prior, a flat stretch of sand flanked by jagged volcanic rock. As he pitched his tent, he noticed the absence of jackrabbit tracks and the usual buzz of cicadas. The desert felt hollow, like a held breath. At sunset, the temperature plummeted. Josh built a small fire, the flames casting twisted shadows on the rocks. He journaled about the day's hike, noting a strange, sulfur-like smell he couldn't place. By 10 p.m., the fire died, and he retreated to his tent. Sleep came fitfully. Midnight shattered the silence. A scream, piercing, guttural, ripped through the air. Josh jolted awake, his pulse roaring. It wasn't a coyote's howl or a mountain lion's cry. This sound felt wrong, as if the desert itself were being torn open. He fumbled for his flashlight, the beam trembling as he unzipped the tent. The beam swept across the outcrop. Nothing. Then, a skittering of pebbles. There, at the edge of the rocks, a silhouette. At first, Josh thought it was a saguaro cactus warped by the dark until it moved. The thing crouched on all fours, limbs grotesquely elongated, joints bending backward like a spider's. Its torso was emaciated, ribs visible beneath papery grayish skin. But the eyes, twin red coals, unblinking, locked onto him. Josh stumbled back, tripping over his gear. The creature's head twitched sideways, a jerky, insectile motion. Then it hissed, a wet, rattling sound, and scuttled sideways along the rock face, claws scraping stone. He ran. Bare feet tore on thorns and shale, but adrenaline numbed the pain. Behind him, dry brush snapped. The creature wasn't chasing, it was herding, driving him eastward into a maze of arroyos. Josh's jeep was west. Panic surged as he realized his mistake. For hours, he zigzagged through washes, the thing always just out of sight, but never out of earshot. Near dawn, he found a crumbling dirt road. Tires spinning, he fishtailed onto the highway and didn't stop until he hit Tucson. Search parties later found his abandoned tent shredded, gear scattered. No footprints, no DNA. Just a single claw mark gouged into the bedrock. Josh never spoke about that night. But sometimes, in the dead of summer, he wakes to the faint smell of sulfur and swears the desert is waiting. Ahmed al-Hadid had guided expeditions across the Rub al-Khali for 20 years. Born in the shadow of the Sharura dunes, he knew the desert's moods, the way sandstorms could rise like vengeful phantoms, or how mirages taunted thirsty travelers with illusions of oasis lakes. But in the summer of 2003, the empty quarter tested him in ways that defied even his Bedouin ancestors' warnings. His group, 3 university students from Riyadh and a German geologist named Klaus, had insisted on a night under the stars. Amateurs, all of them. Ahmed warned them the desert after dark was no playground, but they laughed, snapping photos of sunsets and fossilized coral beds. By dusk on the second day, they reached a site Ahmed had avoided for years. Bir al-Hamra, a crumbling well said to mark the boundary between the living world and the realm of jinn. They pitched tents in a crescent around the well's skeletal stone rim. Klaus joked about desert spirits while the students passed around dates and a flask of spiced coffee. The air grew unnaturally cold, and Ahmed watched the horizon tighten like a coiled snake. Then one of the students, Layla, pointed northeast. "Another fire," she said. A flickering orange light pulsed in the distance. Too steady for a campfire. Too tall. "Bedouins?" Klaus asked, adjusting his glasses. Ahmed shook his head. No tribes camped near Bir al-Hamra. The well was cursed, its water rumored to have turned to blood centuries ago. Yet the group insisted on investigating. "Stay here," Ahmed ordered, but they ignored him, grabbing flashlights and marching into the dark. Only Layla hesitated, glancing back at Ahmed with a faltering smile. Minutes stretched into hours. The desert swallowed their voices. No wind, no scorpions. Just the well's hollow groan, as if something deep below were stirring. Ahmed radioed for help, but static hissed back. At 3 a.m., he strapped on his knife and followed their footprints. The tracks led straight to a shallow depression in the sand. No fire, no tents, no bodies. Just 4 pairs of footprints, perfectly preserved, ending abruptly as if the earth had opened beneath them. Authorities found nothing. No burn marks, no equipment, no traces of struggle. Satellite imaging showed only endless dunes. Locals whispered of Al-Mirath, the inheritor, a jinn who lures the arrogant to a buried city of bones. Ahmed quit guiding that winter, but on still nights, he wakes to the smell of burning myrrh and wonders if the second fire still burns, waiting for the next curious soul. Melissa. Mel Carter had driven the I-80 Nevada route for 6 years, hauling everything from refrigerated produce to volatile chemicals. She prided herself on her punctuality and her ability to outstubborn the desert's tricks: phantom hitchhikers, dust devils that danced like ghosts, and radio static that whispered in dead languages. But on that sweltering August night, the Mojave served her a riddle she couldn't solve. Her GPS had been acting up since Elko, glitching between 2023 and a garbled year she couldn't decipher. 1940 ? She'd ignored it until her exit vanished from the screen entirely, replaced by pulsing red static. Cursing, she took a gamble on a dirt road that seemed to materialize out of the haze, a narrow bone-white path flanked by Joshua trees clawing at the sky. 30 miles in, her fuel light blinked. The desert stretched endlessly, a black ocean under a cold crescent moon. Then, like a mirage, a neon sign flickered ahead. Dusty Joe's truck stop. 24 hours. The letters buzzed and spat, casting a sickly green glow. Mel hesitated. No way this relic wasn't on her maps. But the needle hovered near empty. The parking lot was cracked asphalt, weeds pushing through like skeletal fingers. The main building sagged, its windows boarded except for the diner, which glowed impossibly bright. Inside, chrome stools and formica tables gleamed as if polished minutes ago. A jukebox in the corner played a warped instrumental of Heartbreak Hotel. 4 patrons sat scattered, a trucker in a leather jacket frozen mid-bite into a burger that never dripped grease, a woman in a 1950s poodle skirt staring blankly at her untouched pie, and 2 men in oil-stained coveralls, their hands limp on coffee mugs. None of them breathed. The waitress appeared silently. Bone pale, her blue uniform starched stiff, she held out a steaming mug. Her eyes were glassy, pupils shrunk to pinpricks. "On the house," she rasped, though her lips didn't move. The coffee smelled acrid, like burnt wiring. Mel's throat tightened. She sipped out of reflex. Wrong, wrong, wrong. It tasted like soil and pennies, and gagged. The waitress tilted her head, a marionette's jerky motion. The jukebox skipped, then a blink. Mel was back in her rig, hands vice-gripped on the wheel. Dawn pinked the horizon. No sign, no diner, just a lone tumbleweed catching on her bumper. Her fuel gauge read, full. She vomited onto the asphalt. Nevada Highway Patrol found her 2 hours later, wild-eyed and babbling. They dismissed the fuel as a faulty gauge, the coffee as heat stroke. But Mel knew. Sometimes at 3 a.m., her tongue still burns with that metallic tang, and her rearview mirror flickers with a faint green glow, always just out of reach. The desert is a place of silence, mystery, and sometimes horror. Whether it's ancient spirits, something not quite human, or places that defy logic. One thing's for sure, you're never truly alone out there. If you enjoyed these stories and want more true horror from the darkest corners of the earth, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell, so you never miss a tale that might just keep you up tonight. Until next time, stay safe, stay curious, and never trust what you see in the desert.